Joining us on today's podcast, we have the lovely Cherie Diaz. Cherie is currently the Managing Director in Australia for Open Learning Global, which is a recently listed company providing an online student-centric learning platform with the aim of creating a more online-focused learning experience for higher education providers and other trainers. Not surprisingly, Cherie has a passion for creating successful learning experiences in an online environment, whether the student has vocational, university or non-accredited learning aspirations. As I said, she's currently the Managing Director, and I'd like to welcome Cherie Diaz. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be joining you.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Now, Cherie, I thought a great place to start our conversation today would be exploring how an engaging and perhaps we should also say successful online learning experience differs from a traditional lecture theatre-based experience.
It's an exciting one. I guess there's two parts. There's the difference between a traditional lecture theatre based, and then I also think there's the piece of what's different between an engaging online experience now and e-learning 1.0, as I call it, or most of the industry does too. So I think there's a couple of things that are different. Is one, you need to tailor it to the delivery mode. So quite often, when we look at the traditional lecture theatre-based experience, those that have moved into an online learning delivery mode have tended to take the same content and just shift it into a learning platform and think, there we go, we're done.
Yeah,
but there's
it's now recorded. It's now online.
Yeah, it's recorded. It meets the requirements, but actually the approach needs to be tailored to who you're trying to reach. And that means that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer, unfortunately. You need to take into account, what the type of program is, who your actual main target audience is, and how they're going to be, I don't want to say consuming, because learning isn't just about consuming information, but how they're going to be engaging with the content as well. So I think you need to take into account, is it an online only? Is it blended? What's the actual delivery approach? Start a new time or fixed start date? Is the learning material all accessible from day one of signing up, or actually are you gating the content as well? So all of those elements need to be taken into account, as well as thinking through, where this program or course sits. Is it part of a qualification, and the approach that you're taking there as well? So I think there's those elements in terms of the delivery mode that are really important in setting up for a successful online learning experience. There's also a couple of other things that an online learning experience actually gives you some benefits over a traditional theatre-based. And that really comes down to where you can set up and allow more time for things like icebreakers or setting a scenario of the context or relevance of what you're covering as well. And that really gives learners the opportunity to dive in, where a traditional lecture style is more, I'm the sage on the stage here to present my knowledge and my experience in a more one-directional approach. The other piece that I think is really of value in an online learning experience is you can embed and really set up the fostering of reflection-based activities. So how do you enable or impart and build up that knowledge or skills or competency in a particular area, but also get the learners to engage or reflect on what they're learning and thinking through how they're going to transfer that into their particular context, whether that's a workplace or their own personal lifestyle, etc.
So if you talked a bit more about that last one, because I find that really interesting, because it is so different, or it has the potential to be really different from how we've approached things in the past. I mean, ideally, we're planning out our programs anyway. What could we flesh out there? What kind of extra things could we explore?
Yeah, I think if we take it into a professional learning setting, such as we've all at different points gone to training workshops, etc. And quite often at the end of the day, you'll spend time at the end thinking through, what are the 3 things I'm going to take away from this workshop? Or put in practice when I get back to my work. And then you get back to work and your inbox is full of emails or deadlines and that sort of thing. Reflection is something, particularly in an online learning space, that you can do it in a way that has them set their goals, but also enables them to come back into the community and say, hey, and here's what I did and how it worked for me. So that you can share the wins, but in a not so obvious way, also then engage the rest of the community that they feel more responsible to also embed and show and share with everyone else as well, or see how quick wins are actually able to be put in place by some of the other team members. If I give a specific example, we have quite a few professional development providers in open learning in the teaching space, so accredited teacher professional development. And it's one of those areas that the studies show, and even the reports show, that reflection in adult learning is a key determinant as to whether or not a new skill or knowledge, etc., is actually embedded or transferred into a workplace. But actually, teachers are one of the most time-poor professions that we have. So doing it in a way that they walk away with a resource that helps in embedding that new practice or technique. But also teachers are also, and I'm a little bit biased because I have a teaching background, they're never shy from, sharing materials or techniques with each other as well. So fostering a community where there's tools and the ability to actually share what works and how it works means that it's not reinventing the wheel. You don't have to do it yourself. But at the same point, if you're going through that step of sharing what's working or what's not working, the community then helps to jump in and help you adjust or share ideas of what's worked for them.
So similarly to a community of practice, but really specific to that course or program that they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And you can, the sharing doesn't have to be to a whole community. You can do it just to a small group, or even just to the facilitator or lecturer, depending on the context of the course.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds really good. And I guess the next part of that, what are the expectations of these students, the ones that are in the online learning space? Because presumably, and we know anecdotally that they are different. So how do we need to adapt in order to meet their expectations or to manage their expectations even?
Yeah, I think that's quite a broad question. If we talk, I guess if we narrow it down to a few different types of learners. So if we talk in the more traditional sense, they're signing up for an accredited program. There's a couple of things that we need to take into mind. Quite often, they've chosen online learning because it's enabling them to actually undertake learning when they can't do the on-campus attendance mode. And I'm going to be the first to put my hand up and say that was me twice. I've done both my masters via distance or online. And that is a key factor. So one of the vocational colleges that I ran was actually set up from the outset with the knowledge that we're going to draw primarily working professionals, or those that wanted a career change or upskilling or returning to work, because we had quite a large proportion of mothers in our enrolments as well. So there's little things like the noise that stops them from actually commencing learning. One college that I was running, and it was one that was through a merger, when I first did an audit of the number of emails that were received at the beginning of a semester, they got something like 21 emails in the first 14 days. And it was all out of good intentions to help them start. But that was before they even started accessing the content and learning. So how can you make it as streamlined as possible so that the administration and the getting started doesn't take away from the actual excitement to get started? There's some reports and data out there that says, particularly in a postgraduate sense, that quite often adults, first start looking around in some fields of study at least 14 to 16 months before they enroll. And sometimes it can be up to 2 years. So they've done the research, they've primed themselves to actually start studying. How can you remove any barriers possible to actually get them engaged and excited about the content and the learning experience itself? I think that's really important. I think the other piece is drawing upon or setting up a community of learners where you acknowledge the wealth of experience and scenarios or life examples that they're going to be able to bring to the community as well is really important, because they're not starting from scratch. Whether
Yeah.
they've worked as a nurse and transferring across or whatever it is, parenting full time, time management skills.
Yep,
are
that's what I
something,
keep saying.
I know I've definitely improved my time management skills as a working parent. It's those sort of things where if you can draw in real life examples and leverage what they're bringing to the table, it really not only helps set them up that they're valued as a learner in that experience. It doesn't matter what time zone they're in or when they're logging on, etc. That they're recognised for that wealth of experience that they're bringing to the table. But it also means it takes them that one step further to be able to think through, what am I learning and how are these assessments or activities, etc. They're not a drain on my time, but actually that I can connect this back into the particular context that I'm in at this point in time. Sometimes we study as adults to improve our current capability in our roles. Other times it's a career change. And with that, it's setting up the examples that we're also enabling them to see it and how it could work out if they're not already working in that space as well. So I think that's the type of online learners that we have to be considerate of. We do need to take into account things like they're geographically dispersed. And I know with my second master's, I started it when I was living in Canberra and finished it when I was living in Townsville. So it needs to be adaptable and flexible. But I think the other piece is that the reasons for engaging need to be meaningful. All too often, I see a lot of online learning experiences where you're mandated as to how you have to engage. So it's a minimum number, and it's more a corrective approach rather than actually the activities and the engagement points are really valuable. And I can see that value in my learning experience and my connection with my peers or the facilitator of that course as well. I think the assessment tasks need to be seen as being meaningful and transferable.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't be tokenistic.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, go on.
So that reminds me when I was doing my my master's back when I lived in London. So I was studying from Australia, but I was based in London.
Yeah.
And I know one of the guys in our class, and it was marketing we were doing, and the lecturer admitted at the end of it that he'd had the best outcomes, for his lecture students in the lecture theatre, and the worst ever result for online students because he would forget we were there. He would forget to tell us things. One of the guys who is based in Europe, I can remember him complaining that, well, you may not think that my assignment was any good, but my company is implementing the recommendations from it and we're finding it really effective. It was that kind of, as you say, that real life value that kind of can sometimes get forgotten when the focus is on the traditional students in the lecture environment.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring up a good point there about, the location of the learners and where they were studying from. That has to be taken into account. So one of the colleges that I used to oversee was called Ivy College. And even just looking at our national spread, so our hours of operation had to take into account, we had students in Northern Territory and WA, etc. So having a 9 to 5 Sydney-based hours of operation for our support and our academics wasn't going to work. So we did 8 to 8 Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 Saturday and Sunday. And the connectiveness with the learners meant, that they actually knew they were valued. It wasn't that our support staff were trying to ring them at 9 a.m. Sydney time, so it was 6 a.m. in Perth. We actually factored that in. And the other thing that we really switched the approach on was we moved to the learners telling us when they needed to engage as well. So enabling them to make calendar bookings for support reasons rather than sitting there reactively just having to sit on a phone for 40 minutes waiting until someone was available. It makes a huge difference. It takes what I was saying before about that noise out of it. How do we make it easy for them to study?
Yeah.
And I don't mean easy in terms of the coursework, but actually easy to engage.
Yeah. And I think, it brings to mind, the standard auto response emails you get which say you are valued, and you're like, but I'm not, you're not responding. I've got no way of connecting with you. And
Yeah,
creating those opportunities for people to be able to directly connect, I think, is so valuable, and I think we really underestimate the power that that gives the students.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that I'm kind of curious, and you talked about it briefly when you're talking about community and engaging and sharing, because I know online forums, particularly in learning management systems, can be really painful and they can struggle to get traction with the students. So how can we effectively create that feeling of community in an online learning environment without using Facebook?
Yeah. I'm a little bit biased here as well because I work for Open Learning, which is a learning platform that is based on social constructivism. So community of practice, peer-to-peer interaction, they're all part of how the platform's been designed. And if I give a couple of examples where I've had learning experience where you're actually mandated that, yes, you have to do 3 posts per semester and then you have to respond to 3 others. And you, instead of looking for or engaging with actually what the posts are, you're looking for opportunities to respond. It's a bit like the data about listening to talk or listening to respond versus actually reading for the meaning that's trying to be conveyed. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I think the traditional learning management system makes it hard because it's designed more for content delivery or learning material delivery,
I think.
So things like grade books or attendance and that sort of stuff is more upfront. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I think traditional LMSs still have the capability for forums and things like doing icebreakers. Where they tend to limit or can be limiting is that the icebreakers are revolving around what's your name, where are you located, what's your job, and why are you studying the course. So it becomes more of a dot point activity than an engagement point. So learning design patterns aren't new, but one of the things that we've been doing is we've now been around for 7 years, is actually using the data about what's working most effectively in some of our courses to help scope and then publishing learning design patterns. Icebreakers are probably one of the easiest ones, but they take a little bit of thinking through about who are the types of learners you're drawing into your course and what's an interesting way to engage them. So it can be everything from a recent article or study finding and getting them to do a poll or a pulse check. One of the techniques we use in one of our onboarding courses for our internal staff is it's a randomized question generator. So instead of doing your standard, new team member, what role are they joining, what job have they come from, etc., it spins out 4 random questions and then you video answering them and upload that into the gallery so that people can connect with you and learn something differently about you as a new team member. There's lots of different ways that you can engage people that takes the focus off actually what the course is about and what you're trying to learn, but means that you connect with each other as humans rather than just trying to race towards the finish line. It's what is the learning process itself and the value it brings to why we're all here. There's a couple of other things you can do. So recognition of those learners who are really driving and engaging with each other is another way of doing it. So whether it's the number of likes and comments or notifications, can the course identify and promote that people come back into the course based on notifications and responses they're getting to their posts. Sometimes badges work really effectively as well. So recognition for peer-to-peer interaction, not just on an outcome based or a traditional outcome. I think the other one is change up your approach. If you've got a student or a learning cohort that is signed up for a qualification and you've got the same activities or icebreakers in every single course that's within that program, it's going to get repetitive.
Very quickly.
So, yeah, very quickly, you almost become... I like it. It'd almost be like speed dating. You've got the same, 30 seconds to say the same comments. That you have to mix it up. And it also means that you're going to deepen that connection between your learners and the facilitator or lecturer as well. I think another way you can do it is using group functionality if it's available in whatever platform you're using, so that you give learners an option or ability to connect based on interest levels. So sometimes you can have self-opt-in study groups, or groups that if you're talking about a more generalist course and there's areas or topics that you can opt into rather than everyone being expected to go down the same pathway, is a different way as well of engaging your learners into it. And then, as I've mentioned in terms of icebreakers, but things like use of videos or polls or social media links as well as a way of connecting with your learners is important.
Yeah, I like that. That just, it does sound so much more interesting. And I know when I've worked with student mentors trying to get them to do little video, because like you say, online environment, trying to be the human, not just a standard email. And we all know that students don't like reading their emails because, as you say, there's so much noise and they can't find the bits that they need because we don't tailor it to the individual. We need to know who they are.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be videos every time either. So, from a operational perspective, quite often we then look at what's the cost of producing videos, or, the amount of time and confidence level. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, I hate being videoed. Even worse, I hate watching myself on video. So there's that piece. There's that piece of, one of the courses that a team member recently did, or one of our learning designers did, took away the need to actually do a video and actually did a newscast. So more of that traditional newscast voiceover sort of engagement. Had a narrator, told a story, but it then meant that your cost of production, you have a different way of engaging with people. If they're studying whilst traveling to and from work or whatever it is, there's less data usage. It's actually easier to consume as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't exhaust your phone battery so much as when you're trying to watch something with a video.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, I love it. So they're all the questions that I had, Cherie. Was there anything that you'd like to share about the work that you guys are doing at the moment, or anything new that's coming up?
Yeah, that would be great. So we, just for a bit of context, Open Learning is an Australian founded company, founded in 2012. It's a lifelong learning platform. So for context, we have currently 1.74 million learners across 165 countries. In order of, our largest cohort of learners is actually based in Malaysia, with Australia being our second largest cohort. We work with 62 education partners at the moment in Australia. That includes 8 universities and 3 private higher education providers, as well as a range of government departments and professional development associations itself. One of the newer initiatives, and it's currently open for public consultation as well, is we've launched a micro-credentialing framework called Open Credits. And what I've had a lot of fun and we put a lot of focus in is most of the micro-credentialing frameworks that are out there are only targeting postgraduate level AQF courses. So this one has been designed to be a lifelong learning micro-credentialing framework, focusing primarily on the Australian qualification framework and sector, so including professional development, membership associations, CPD providers, and vocational as well. Mm-hmm. So that is going through a consultation phase. So we actually want feedback. It's not a case of us saying, here's our micro-credentialing framework, it's going to work. We're consulting with all levels, higher ed, vocational, non-accredited as well, industry employers, just to get feedback as to, will this work? What needs to be tweaked? How do we need to tighten up the language, etc.? Just to make sure that when we launch on the 1st of July, that we've made it as valuable as possible to the end user, which is the lifelong learner.
That sounds great. And I just love that approach, that it is not just the standard, it's that expansion. How do we look at that as a bigger picture?
Yeah, definitely. I a little bit selfishly, it's, if I look at my learning journey, I've done higher ed, then dipped back into vocational, then back into higher ed. I've done non-accredited, And I think all the data tells us that that has been the norm, but it's going to increasingly be the norm as we, grow and prepare for the future of work. So it was an important part of building out the framework.
Yeah, and I think as we become more transitional between careers and things like that, we need to be able to make faster moves. And so a lot more of those shorter programs are going to become much more valuable for us in the future. So having that recognition altogether is going to be very valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Cherie. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all rolls out.
No, thank you. It's been lots of fun and great chatting with you.
Thank you.